I never thought I'd be writing this story, but here I am. It's been 3 years since everything fell apart, and I think I'm finally ready to share what happened. Looking back, I had everything: a loving fiance, a close-knit family, and what I thought was a stable life. I met Ryan in kindergarten. We grew up together, our families becoming inseparable over the years. He was an only child, while I had 2 older sisters. Ryan spent almost every evening at our house, and we'd spend weekends at his. When we started dating in high school, our parents threw a celebration that lasted days. They'd always joked about us ending up together. Ryan was my rock. When I struggled with self-doubt, he was there. When I gained weight during college, and my mom made comments about how I should watch myself, Ryan stood up for me. He told my mom that he loved me for who I was, not what I looked like. Though he'd always add with a smile that to him, I was the most beautiful person he'd ever seen. My middle sister Diana was different from the rest of us. She kept to herself mostly, except with Ryan. She saw him as the brother she never had, and he helped her through some rough patches, legal troubles, substance abuse, you name it. I loved Diana because she was my sister, but we never really got along. 6 months after Ryan proposed, Diana surprised me by suggesting we go dancing together. She said she felt bad about being distant and wanted to bond. I wasn't much for clubs, but I agreed. After a few drinks, I started enjoying myself. The night was going well until Diana spotted some guy she liked. She went to talk to him, but came back looking upset. When I asked what happened, she said he'd asked for my number instead of hers. I tried to cheer her up, telling her he wasn't worth it. She excused herself to use the restroom, and I waited. And waited. After about an hour, I was pretty drunk and decided to head home. As I was leaving, I ran into Diana's ex-boyfriend Marcus. He offered to share a cab since he was leaving too. I agreed, but in the cab, everything started spinning. The last thing I remember was trying to find my phone in my purse. I woke up on a hard couch with a pounding headache. I was in Marcus's living room, my phone dead on the coffee table. He said I'd passed out in the cab, and since he couldn't remember my parents' address, he brought me to his place and let me sleep on the couch. He gave me some aspirin and called me a cab home. When I got to my parents' house, I walked into a nightmare. Ryan, his parents, my parents, and Diana were all waiting. Before I could explain, Ryan started yelling, asking how I could cheat on him. Diana jumped in, calling me horrible names and saying I'd been flirting with guys all night. She showed everyone photos of Marcus with his hand on my back as we left the club. I begged them to call Marcus. He'd tell them nothing happened. But when Diana called him, he told a completely different story. He claimed I'd begged him to take me home and that we'd slept together multiple times. I was in shock. I knew right then that Diana had set the whole thing up, but nobody would listen to me. Ryan left without another word. My mom slapped me and told me to get out. I spent the next few days at my friend Jade's place, calling and texting Ryan nonstop. He never responded. Then my mom sent me a message saying she was throwing all my stuff out and that I wasn't welcome home anymore. She called me names I don't even want to repeat. Just like that, I lost everything. My family took Ryan's side. No one would take me in. I was sleeping on different couches every few nights, trying to figure out what to do next. I kept trying to reach out to everyone to explain my side, but they all blocked me. The breaking point came at Christmas. I went to my parents' house hoping to talk things out. No one answered the door. Then Jade called me. She'd seen photos on Facebook of my entire family celebrating Christmas 2 states away. Everyone was there: my sisters, parents, grandparents, and even Ryan and his family. They all looked so happy in the pictures, like I never existed. I cried for days after seeing those photos. Then I made a decision. I was done. I blocked everyone and returned my engagement ring. Jade knew someone who owned a restaurant a few hours away. He needed help and had a tiny apartment above the restaurant that came with the job. The rent was cheap, and I could start over. I took the job. The apartment was barely bigger than a closet, and I worked more than 10 hours every day, but I saved money. The restaurant owner, an old guy named Joe, became like a father to me. He taught me everything about running a restaurant and eventually promoted me to assistant manager. After 2 years of hard work, I moved into a nice condo. I kept working at the restaurant though. I owed Joe that much for helping me when no one else would. Life wasn't perfect, but I was doing okay. I had my own place, a steady job, and some new friends. I'd almost convinced myself I was over everything that happened. Then one day, someone knocked on my door. It was Ryan. All those feelings I'd buried came rushing back. I tried to slam the door in his face, but he stopped it. He begged me to let him explain. Diana had gotten married, he said, and at her wedding, she'd confessed to everything. She told everyone she'd set me up that night because she thought Ryan deserved better than me. She'd arranged everything with Marcus to make it look like I'd cheated. Ryan said my family had been trying to find me. He'd gotten my address from Jade. They wanted to see me to apologize. I told him I needed time to think. How could I just forgive them? They'd thrown me away without even listening to my side. Sure, they didn't know Diana was lying, but they'd known me my whole life. They should have at least given me a chance to explain. I didn't respond to Ryan, but a few days later my dad showed up at my door. When I saw him standing there, I got sick. He helped clean up, and then we sat down to talk. I broke down crying. His familiar cologne brought back so many memories. When he tried to hug me, I pushed him away. He told me he and my mom were getting divorced. He'd wanted to contact me right after I left, but my mom wouldn't let him. She kept saying I was being dramatic and would come back when I was done acting like a child. They didn't even realize I'd really left until they came back from their New Year's trip. That's when they contacted Jade and learned I'd moved away. My dad said my mom had lied about throwing out my things. Everything was still in my old room. He told me he'd cut contact with Diana and my mom. Diana had tried to play the victim, saying she was unwell and needed family support. My mom backed her up, crying about how they'd lost one daughter and couldn't lose another. But my dad wasn't having it. He'd blocked them both and had been pressing Ryan to find me. I told him how much they'd hurt me. I described what it felt like seeing those Christmas photos, knowing they were all together while I was alone. By the end, we were both crying. Dad offered to help me find a better apartment and job, but I refused. I wouldn't leave Joe's restaurant. He'd helped me when my own family wouldn't. I agreed to work on rebuilding my relationship with my dad, but on my terms. It would take time to trust him again if I ever could. Then he told me something else. Ryan had been arrested for attacking Marcus after Diana confessed. The charges were dropped, but it showed me Ryan had really believed me in the end. Dad also gave me Diana's husband's number. I called him and told him everything, about Diana's lies, her drug problems, everything. Instead of defending her, he sighed. Turns out Diana had been causing problems between him and his sister with more lies. His sister hadn't even come to their wedding because of Diana's stories. So here's where things stand now. I'm working on rebuilding my relationship with my dad. He's showing he's serious about making things right by divorcing my mom and cutting off Diana. I won't forgive my mom. She's still defending Diana and treating her like a victim. As for Ryan, I haven't decided yet. I haven't met with him to talk things through. I've learned that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most can hurt you the worst. But I've also learned that I'm stronger than I ever thought possible. I built a new life from nothing. I found people like Joe who showed me what real support looks like. I don't know what the future holds with my family, but I know now that I'll be okay either way. Some trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired, and that's okay too. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button to help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.